What did you take from her? So that when he says, I didn't know, where was it posted? I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on all that stuff, that I can say, basically.
And I still really don't want to, and yet I need to with my little retirement hobbit project.
There you go.
Little.
Watch it.
It is. Sounds like it's getting bigger and bigger.
It is. Lord, you're out of control.
Are we ready? It is 9 a.m. and we are here for our regularly scheduled business meeting, and we will start with our invocation. Father, we just say thank you that you're here. We don't have to invite you, but we welcome you here. And today, what's on my heart, and I believe is on your heart, is to ask you for heaven's agenda for Bonner County, for North Idaho, for this whole nation. We ask for your agenda to be here. And we ask for the blueprints of heaven for this county to come down. And anything that doesn't line up with your blueprint, anything that doesn't line up with that, Lord, we pray that you would drop the plumb line, and that everything would just go so that this for North Idaho, for Bonner County, your plans and your purposes would be established here. And we just say thank you for that. Lord, we say thank you for that you are the healer. And we ask, God, that everybody that is sick in this place, that you would bring healing. Jesus, you said by your stripes we are healed. So we just ask, God, that for what you already accomplished, we just thank you for the healing of this place, everybody that is sick here, in Jesus' name. We just pray your peace here. We pray your love here. We pray your unity, that hearts would be for the welfare of our city, for the welfare of our county and our state and our nation. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Please follow in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, at this time, we will entertain a motion to adopt the order of the agenda.
Based on the information before us, I move to adopt the order of agenda as presented.
Seconded?
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any comment from the public on this item? Seeing none, any discussion from the board? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 All right, next item up is our consent agenda. We'll entertain a motion on this item.
Based on the information before us, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any comment from the public on the consent agenda? Seeing none, deliberation by the board. I'll add that solid waste has a purchase of 2-roll. I'm almost wondering if that's the right word. It's called, they say 2-roll off dumb boxes. Is that correct?
2 roll-off, yeah.
2 roll-off. Oh, roll-off is one word. Okay. There's a space there, so. Okay, dumb boxes to haul tires. It's $13,100 there. All right, if no further deliberation by the board, we'll roll call vote. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, up next is our Clerk Rosedale.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, everybody. Before you, I have claims batch number 25 for fiscal year 25, totaling $515,864.78. And the big items on this are insurance for 22 workman's comp. Road and Bridge has a grant match of $44,000. We have $33,000 in license and support for our election software, and $54,000 for junior college tuition. What that is any Bonner County residents that go to school outside of Bonner County get a $500 credit per semester, up to $3,000. And this is their January bill that they finally billed us for.
All right.
Tort of $77,000, and highway special, which is passing through money with them, of $25,000, and I'm not done yet. And we have about $50,000 in Marine Patrol repair, maintenance, and other things. Now I'm done.
All right, at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Based on the information before us, I move to approve payment of the FY25 claims in batch number 25 totaling $515,864.78.
Seconded?
Any comment from the public on this item? Seeing none, any discussion from the board?
Nope.
All right, roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
motion
Clerk.
passes. Were you going to say something?
I just thank the clerk.
Oh, all right, next item is planning. Alex.
Thank you, Commissioners. Alex Van, Planning Staff. In front of you, we have a resolution from a right-of-way vacation that the board approved in December of 2024 to vacate a portion of Only Boulevard, which is lying in Section 3, Township 56 North, Range 2 West, Boise Meridian. The resolution before you was reviewed by legal for accuracies as well as the Land Records Department to confirm ownership. This was approved when Commissioner Domke was not in office quite yet, so I think I can let Bill speak to this as well, but if there's I think it would still be appropriate as a, excuse me, sorry. It'd be appropriate as the board to sign the resolution, but if you don't feel comfortable voting for it and signing for it, that would be appropriate as well.
And just to clarify, based on my review, it appears that there is no access to public lands or any other public areas, that this is solely confined within private property other than this already partially abandoned road right-of-way that was never utilized for access purposes as a road to those parcels. Is that an
That's
accurate
correct.
statement?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you for clarifying. But yeah, based on the information that I see, I know anytime we talk about a road vacation based on some history, we want to be extremely careful and thoughtful about it. But given the conditions of this one, I don't see any concerns, so thank you.
All right. At this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Based on the information before us, I move to approve resolution number 2025-23, vacating a portion of Olney Boulevard located in Section 3, Township 56 North, Range 2 West, Boise Meridian, Idaho.
Second?
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any comment from the public on this item? All right, seeing none, any discussion by the board?
None for me.
All right.
I would
see-
just like to clarify something too, because it sounds like it's a right-of-way. It is a right-of-way. I'm just want to let the public know that isn't even a road in existence there. So, point of clarification.
Okay. Anything further? All right, roll call vote?
Yes.
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 All right, thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next up is our clerk, or Assessor Engelhardt.
Morning, Commissioners,
Good morning.
public. I have a memorandum and a resolution for you today. Before I start on the memorandum, there's two corrections I'd like to make in the suggested motion. The word madam, the O should be an A, and down at the bottom, legal risk and auditor all approved on the 19th of March. The emails are attached for those approvals. Bonner County Assessor would like to surplus 8 vehicles enumerated below. Do you want me to read the vehicles and the VIN numbers?
I think you can just say the VIN numbers are included in the memo and that would suffice.
Okay, I'll do that. The attached resolution declares the above-mentioned vehicles as surplus. Did we assign a resolution number to this?
24,
2524?
correct.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 2524, surplus vehicles, whereas Idaho Code Section 31-807 and 31-808 vest the Board of County Commissioners with the power and the authority to manage real and personal property for the benefit of the county, and whereas Bonner County Assessor is in possession of 8 the following surplus vehicles. Again, do you want me to state that?
No,
Okay. And whereas in accordance with Idaho Code Section 31, Chapter 8, the Board of County Commissioners determined that it would be in the best interest of the citizens of Bonner County, now therefore be it resolved that the vehicles enumerated above be declared surplus and are no longer needed. After motion and approving decision of the Board of Bonner County Commissioners, these vehicles shall be surplused and sold at auction.
and for also comment on this one is during our budget cycle last season, it was that we were going to surplus these vehicles when you got the new
Yes,
vehicles.
and we've received the last of them.
And then the surplus or the funds from these goes back into your account. Is that,
General account.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that people don't have when will these be listed? Are you going to wait until this?
Quite frankly, I don't know how the county does their auction. But
So you don't have a time constraint?
I don't have a time constraint. They're just collecting dust, you know. And if, quite frankly, if some other department sees some utility in them for local use around there, then I would say this is an opportunity for you to go take a look at those. They're not suited for our needs, but if you're driving from shop to shop
Well,
or
once
something
we
like that.
surplus them, they can't.
I don't know. If
to
once they're
go up on
surplus,
the
does
auction?
the county still have control over them?
I'm going
Can
to
you-
ask Bill that one.
I think our typical process, by the way, Bill Wilson for the record, our typical process is that we vet them internally and see if any other department has a use
Before.
for those. That's usually how we do it. And then if no other departments show interest in that, then we will put them up for surplus. I don't think there's any reason why we, if we determine that they are surplus, and then a department comes in later and says, oh, actually, I think I could use that, we're not bound to auction them at that point. We could still utilize them for our own purposes. So I don't know if the order is determined. It doesn't bind our hands.
Once we put them up on that auction site, then we should sell them though.
Once we take that step, then yes, obviously we're committing to sell. But
Okay.
in the interim, if another department may not have been aware of this before we took this step, now maybe they become aware, we could always walk that back and then put that vehicle to productive use in a different department if they want to.
Would
Okay.
someone who had interest have to do another resolutions for whatever vehicles they wanted?
Probably procedurally, yeah, probably
Okay.
be the neatest way to do that. And we just have to do that again at another business meeting.
So Bill, since the resolution says the vehicle shall be surplus and sold at auction, am I understanding correctly that if between the surplusing, which would happen with the resolution, and the time that we actually post them for sale, you're saying then that if a department has an interest, that we could make arrangements to transfer a vehicle to an internal county department?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification because I've heard mixed information internally in the past about the ability to do something like that, and I just want to be sure that we're
For the most
clear
part,
on-
we have that freedom. I think one of the places where we've made an exception to that rule is for solid waste, because I think the statutes tell us that that's supposed to be kind of an enterprise fund where, and we have some history in this organization of trying to do loans from that fund to other parts of the county that were later determined to be inappropriate. So our policy has been we don't transfer assets from solid waste to other portions of the the organization, but as within the other parts of it, we try to make the best productive use of the assets that we have. And sometimes a vehicle can no longer serve the purpose for which it was allocated to a department like the assessor's office, but it may still have some value to another department. It does happen. So.
I know we're not deliberating now, but I have another legal question then. If his budget paid for the vehicles and his budget is supposed to get whatever funds they can't, if we pass it to another department, they're not paying for it. And so how does his budget, seems like it has to be sold. Because part of one of the discussions that I'm looking back to the budget hearing was that the number requested was 2, and then it got bumped up, and the conversation was specific to, they could recover some money by the sale of the vehicles that we're talking about. And so distributing them within the county as surplus doesn't allow you to recover for what it cost you.
If I can,
If I'm not,
well, no, you're right, that was the conversation that we
Okay.
had. But since then, I've talked to Clerk Rosedale. It would be my desire that any sales money go back into the revaluation fund, which can only be used for things related to revaluation. And since these were purchased out of that fund, my argument was it should go back in that fund. But if that happens, my next year budget, when I go to do that budget, then the clerk's going to look at that amount in that existing fund. There's always some residue in that fund, and whatever I ask for is going to be reduced by whatever in that budget already, so that I have enough funds to operate the next year, including any money there. Is that correct?
Right, but that paper trail allows it to be that, it's just that he doesn't need that amount from the county as a whole because he got whatever percentage he could recover from the sale of those cars. And so how is it not still appropriate? You don't have that money go back in that account.
You have the legal, this has been a long-standing practice, and I think that it's always been, I don't see any legal impediment to transferring the vehicles between different departments. However, if you, just for accounting purposes and trying to keep the budget as neat as possible, if you only wanted to allow that money to be surplus auctioned and then get put back into the budget from which it was originally allocated, the board could do that. But I don't think there's a legal impediment to the practice we have now of distributing between departments.
Because it could look like you could just buy out of a fund like that and then say, I don't need it anymore, I'm going to transfer it to a different department. You know, I mean, that's the slippery slope. I would rather it be cleaner, but I get it.
Can you add some clarification, Mike?
I'll confer with Bill before I make a comment.
Okay,
All right.
Thank you.
Can I make a different motion?
We don't have a motion on the table. I
No,
don't believe.
well, I mean, are you guys, we have to motion to move forward, and he has written a motion. I guess let's just deliver, you can motion his motion, we can deliberate. Well, at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Based on the information before us, I move that county approve resolution number 25-24, Assessor's Office Vehicle Surplus for the vehicles enumerated in the same resolution.
Seconded?
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any comments from the public on this item? And I'm going to go to Doug Patterson, who's on Zoom. Please state your name.
This is Doug Patterson, Bonner County resident for the record. Could we get a brief description at least of these vehicles so that folks would know if they're interested or not?
Okay, I will say there's a 2004 Chevy Tracker, 2005 Jeep Liberty, 2011 Ford Escape, 2011 Ford Escape, 2011 Ford Escape, 2011 Ford Escape, so that is total of 4 Ford Escapes. There's a 2012 Ford Escape, 2016 Dodge Durango. That's the 8 vehicles listed. And if you pull up the online claims packet, you'll see that he listed vehicle and the VIN number in that packet.
Thank you. I assumed that they would be there, but I just wanted for people who were just casually coming in to be able to, know if they were interested or not. Thank you.
Okay. Can we confirm that there's no hand raised behind that symbol? Okay, all right. Any further public comment? All right, seeing none, deliberation by the board.
So I've been talking with Bob Howard and the assessor. We went out and looked at the vehicles, and Bob is kind of in charge of our motor pool. And we decided that 3 of the vehicles that are being surplus by the assessor's office would serve the motor pool greatly so that we could get rid of some of the dilapidated vehicles in our motor pool. So I believe that resolution is being written up and will be presented to the board probably next week on those 3 vehicles. I would also like to state that this isn't the only surplus property the county has. There's also surplus vehicles from Road and Bridge and possibly another department. So it'll be all wrapped up into one big auction when it does happen. So it's not limited to just these.
So I'm a little, and Bob's not here, during budget time, I was that car focus, and I specifically asked about whether there were operational vehicles to reduce the number that was needed to purchase. And the response from the assessor and Director Howard was that these were not vehicles that could be used and we needed to sell all of them, that there wasn't an option. So how do we end up with 3 now that could be used, which arguably, if I'm on the flip side of the community, if 3 could be used in a motor pool, then we could have reduced the number that we purchased for. And I'm gonna say,
I can respond.
yeah, go ahead.
In my version of couldn't be used relates to how those vehicles are used and tasked in my operation. If they are of greater utility than what exists now in your motor pool for the whole county, changing out one of your dilapidated vehicles for one of these, like I said, they may have some utility if you're going to be traveling around here. They're not good for us to go up into the mountains and hills and dales and stuff.
Okay. So for me, I don't think it's right for the money that came out of the assessor's line to go go elsewhere. The purpose, it was in part, that would help cover some of the costs associated with the new items. And even if that means when you get to budget time, there's something that is going to be adjusted because you had money put in there, that was the whole discussion, was your budget was going to receive the money back because your budget paid for these items. And these aren't small ticket items, these are larger items. It's not the same as I bought a printer, who needs a printer? This is a vehicle, arguably 3 vehicles that are drivable. And also something we told the community that we were going to be surplusing during that budget time. So my view on this is that they should be surplused and the funds go back into your account.
I have no problem with that. Whatever follows the intent of the law and whatever works in terms of auditing and legality for the county, I'll be cooperative with that.
Any other comment from the board on that? I just don't like the not putting it back in his box.
Well, yeah, for me, I'm trying to understand the balance between if there was an agreement made in the current year's budget cycle, then we should follow through with that agreement. If ultimately in following through with that, there will be surplus funds within the assessor's budget that can't be carried forward, then I think it's reasonable for us to make that evaluation and determine if that's the case. Does it make sense then to take an equal value in these vehicles and see if there's a reuse within the county to reduce other county operational costs? So it's a win-win. It sounds like there's some legwork we could do. I don't believe, from what I'm understanding from Mr. Wilson, that the current resolution would prevent us from having some flexibility if we make that evaluation. But I do think it's important that we carry forward with the agreement that was made so that we keep the assessor's budget whole as a part of the overall budget process with the vehicles. But if we have flexibility to keep his budget whole, as I believe he was indicating earlier, and be able to reallocate one or more of these vehicles for other county purposes, and I think that's the best case scenario.
It's the thing that he's referencing is, and I'm going to kind of like basically the thing of if I don't spend down my budget, then I'm not going to get new money for the next budget because we would be putting money in the budget. So it isn't that the money that goes into the budget wouldn't be carried forward. It's that when we come to budget time and he wants more money, he's not going to get more money. It's going to be money less what we put in. And it still makes him whole because he gets the money in. And it is a very clear auditing track of those vehicles were paid for out of his budget. And so to ensure his due diligence in his own budget, it should be the sale of his vehicles that were paid for by his budget goes back into his budget. And then when we come budget time and clerk says, well, this is the maximum you can have in this account, you only need this much, he's still made whole. Because we can't mess with his line versus on our general budget, we can move money around to a need. So it's kind of similar to tort. He can only spend it on certain. And since he can only spend it on certain, this is an opportunity to put the money back in his pot, and then use our funds that are unencumbered elsewhere.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
And so
Thank you
that's
for clarifying.
that's my issue. So I don't have an issue with surplusing the vehicles. I just want to make sure that, for me, my request is that the money goes back into the account it came out of. Because that's the due diligence of also the taxpayers. And we justified it. You justified your purchase using that logic, which some people actually are waiting to know, when are we surplusing vehicles? And I asked Bob that question as well, because some people's thoughts were they would want to buy some of these vehicles. So that's
thank you. To further clarify, and that was helpful for me, it seems unlikely, but in the event that the current remaining balance of that budget and the value that would come from auctioning these 8 vehicles, if that was going to exceed whatever the budget need is for that specific budget, then there might be an opportunity to consider if we wanted to not sell one or more, but only if we were going to completely infill that budget, then is what it sounds like. So that there'd be no need to take unencumbered funds in order to fill that budget. Is that an accurate?
I think
Okay.
that'd be accurate assumption. Any comment from you?
So since we're going down that rabbit hole, I'll put my 2 cents worth in. It seems only fiscally responsible for us, as we are entrusted by the public's money, that we utilize everything the best that we can. We have a motor pool that is dilapidated. It might be able, the cars over there right now might be able to make it to Clark Fork or something. I wouldn't take one of those cars to Coeur d'Alene. The assessor's office has some vehicles that don't work for them. That's why they got new ones. These ones are in better shape. than what is sitting in our motor pool now, which isn't saying much. Director Howard, myself drove them last week, and they have brake problems and strut problems and steering problems, and that's just from just doing a quick little test drive on them. So I think that the people entrust us with spending their money properly, I think anytime that we can utilize a vehicle that's going to be surplus, and literally, they're going to be surplus for pennies on the dollar. If that vehicle is worth $10,000, we'd be lucky to get $1,500 or $2,000 for it. That's an $8,000 deficit that we're taking on it when we could put that into the motor pool, or unless the board decides maybe just to buy a couple of 2 or 3 new rigs to put in motor pool at over $100,000. I guess that would be the option because we don't have a motor pool. And when we go traveling, such as going down to Boise in a couple, 3 weeks, we're looking at per diem for us to drive, because not all of us fly, or rent cars and drive, and all of that is an expense to the county. Whereas if we had a couple of decent vehicles in the motor pool, we'd be using the county vehicles and just buying gas. So I would just like to plant that seed for a future topic. Not that what we're talking about right now has anything to do with surplusing out the assessor's vehicles, but since we're talking about it, I would like to raise those issues.
I think I hear your comment about if the vehicles could be used elsewhere. My comment is specific to his budget paid for it, and his budget during our last fiscal budget year was, the comment was we would put this money back into the budget that paid for it. The idea of what do we do with the motor pool is, I think, something that does need to be addressed, but it's separate from this issue. And if we're talking, other departments have to come to us to say, I want a truck, it's going to cost this, is this within my budget? So if another department feels like they want one of these vehicles and it's on the surplus, they could look at purchasing it. But it's the paper trail and the fiscal responsibility aspect that the assessor's budget paid for these. And so the assessor's budget can recover some of the costs because the vehicles that he purchased are expensive. And so it was a way of also helping reduce that exposure so his budget can run better, because they didn't anticipate all of the vehicles even that were awarded. And so it's reasonable to put it back in. I also find it, we need to have a discussion about vehicles, because one day they operate, the next day they don't. We've had a couple inconsistencies in discussion. But I think motor pool is separate from his budget paid for these. They need to be surplus. That's what we talked about. Currently, the item that was motion was just that we surplus. It didn't specify where the money went. So we can address that later and agree to surplus the vehicles, which is putting them on the site. Does that do you have a comment on that, Commissioner Korn?
My comment stands.
Commissioner Domke?
I agree with Commissioner Korn's concerns about the current motor pool, but I do think we have to address that in a separate way. Since there was already an agreement made under the current fiscal year's budget for these vehicles, I think we need to honor that agreement and look at the best course of action by doing a more thorough evaluation going forward with the motor pool issue. So I think we do have to address that separately based on the fact that the value of these vehicles, whatever it is, was already committed to the assessor's office.
Any further deliberation by the board?
Nope.
Hearing none, roll call vote. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. Youngdahl.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Chase Youngdahl, Bonner County Noxious Weeds Director. Commissioners, before you is a grant application for submission to an NGO called the Idaho Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And the proposal is for the printing of a new revised edition of the Selkirk Cooperative Weed Management Area Noxious Weeds Handbook. The grant does not require matching funds, although it does prefer them. So on the budget form in your packets, you'll see that they have the match broken up into two different categories for being in-kind and cash. The in-kind is easy. That's just the amount of time spent by CWMA members reviewing and proofing the new edition. And some members have pledged some cash match. I did list $1,000 for Bonner County cash match. They do give the option of declaring whether that is pending or committed. And I did specify the $1,000 Bonner County cash match as pending, being that I do not have an allocation in my current budget for grant match. But this is set to be awarded the end of August. So should the project be awarded and should we move forward with accepting it, it would put the process into FY26. So being that it would be carried out in the next fiscal year, we could have the discussion on grant match this summer in our budget workshops. So that's all I have. With that, I'd go ahead and turn it over.
So to clarify, because you have the Bonner County $1,000 cash grant matches pending, that would simply be a part of the consideration for whether or not they award the grant?
No, not necessarily. I suspect that the more match that you list, whether it be pending or committed, probably just scores it a little bit higher on their rubric.
Yeah, I think that's part of their consideration. But
Yeah.
in any case, it's how you're proposing to submit the application.
Yeah, but as pending at this time.
And you're saying you could leave it as pending until next fiscal year where we can budget for the $1,000 that is pending?
Yeah,
So this vote is just to move forward with the grant application as written with a pending of $1,000 until next fiscal review.
yeah, this is just sending the application to the organization.
Okay, thank
That's all
you.
this is, yep.
Any further questions to Chase? All right, at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Based on the information before us, I move to approve the Noxious Weeds Handbook Grant proposal for submission to the Idaho Fish and Game Wildlife Foundation and authorize the chair to sign administratively.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any comment from the public on this item? All right, seeing none, any further discussion from the board?
None?
Seeing none, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Chase.
All right. So this is essentially a continuation of the discussion that was started at our last business meeting with regard to the proposal that was brought forward by Project 7B to pursue a grant to hire an outside consultant to assist with the third-party review of the comprehensive plan. As was requested during our discussion last week, I have included the text of my notes that I read at the meeting. And then we also were updated during that discussion by the planning director that evening the planning commission was going to be holding their meeting and that this would be an agenda item during their meeting. And as a result of their discussion, we received a memorandum from the Planning Commission with regard to this consideration. The summary, and I'll make it very brief, and we may be able to call on Chairman Songstad as well. I believe he's online. But in the last paragraph, it indicates that it's the suggestion of the Planning Commission that the BOCC receive the Planning Commission's recommendation and hold a workshop with the Planning Commission to answer any questions or concerns, and then it can decide if the services of a consultant are appropriate. And there's additional information throughout this two-page memorandum. And so we have the Planning Commission's perspective, and my suggestion is that I move forward to work with legal and others to prepare a resolution for the board's consideration so that we can determine all of the possible details of scope of work, schedule, funding, all of those items for the board to consider and make a final determination.
This is just a discussion item.
Correct. Just a discussion. I'm just looking to get the overall sentiment of the board to determine whether to spend the time moving forward with preparing a resolution for the board's actual action and voting.
So I think it'd be improper to allow special interest groups having undue influence on our local representative process, such as what is being discussed here. If the board wants to entertain hiring a professional planner to do this, I think it should be, the money should be 100% from the county and not from any other special interest groups around the county. I've highlighted, so this is the letter that was given to us from the Planning Commission. And I've highlighted every place on this letter on 2 different pages where they don't recommend moving forward with this. Last week, that was one of the holdups, was we wanted to hear from the Planning Commission. And now that we have, I don't see any reason to keep moving forward with this. And I can read those excerpts if you guys would like.
Certainly may.
So
It's in the packet, so the whole,
Yep.
the whole thing's there.
It says, after discussion and review of the proposal, the Planning Commission decided that the retention of a consultant would not be helpful to the Planning Commission, either for the already updated comp plan components or in the evaluation of the draft land use component. The Planning Commission also considered this proposal and determined it was at best premature at this point. Only the land use component remains in draft form, so it's almost wrapped up at this point. The Planning Commission has received public comments in all of our meetings, and we have held 10 workshops in different areas of the county to receive further public input. In addition to the substantial comments we received at our meetings, we also received and evaluated over 500 written comments. The Planning Commission is now in a position to hold a hearing on April 22nd of this year. Based upon this history, it would be difficult to have a meaningful, high-level review of the planning effort. And of course, it says that the Planning Commission has had input from the prosecutor's office as well during this process. And then it goes on the last paragraph talking about professional planners. And that's what this was intending to do, was to hire a professional planner. And our last comp plan, it says, indeed, much of the old comp plan was drafted by a contractor, JUB Engineers, and they came up with a 700-page comp plan, which is being whittled down to 300 pages, thank you to our own Planning Commission. So anytime you have a 700-page document, even 300 pages is a lot, but it's going to be hard for the general public or anyone else to go through 700 pages of document trying to figure out what our land use issues are. So those are just some of the highlighted things that were written to us by the Planning Commission.
So I would like to try to clarify your comment about, I believe you indicated it would be inappropriate to allow an outside entity, a third party, to influence. And I would agree with that, but I don't see anything in what I've proposed that would do that. It specifically indicates that the board, if we were chose to move forward, would be the ones to go through a selection process for an outside consultant, and the board solely would oversee the consultant. So if funding comes in through grants or donations, but we oversee the selection and the work of the consultant, I'm failing to understand how we would be allowing an outside entity to influence those decisions.
So it's as simple as optics. We have optics of the general public that is saying, hey, look, we have 1 or 2 special interest groups that have certain beliefs, and they're donating money or they're going out looking for money for this project. And I think it was probably misrepresented a little bit last week. I have a hard time believing that we're going to get a professional planner to look at our comp plan for $10,000 to $15,000. There was another professional planner that spoke up last week that said he just did one. I think it was in Wyoming for $50,000 or $60,000. I think that would be up to the people if they thought that was wise to spend $50,000 or $60,000 on something that we've already got finished. We've had public input for the last 2 years, 10 traveling meetings, 500 emails, not to mention every one of these meetings are open meetings where public can come and participate. So I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse, if you will. We're saying we're going to entertain looking into this when we haven't even entertained to see what it would cost to get us a professional planner to review this, if that was even something that we decided to do.
So, do you want to respond?
Yes, please. So, understood. So it's important, I think, again, to differentiate your concern about optics versus the reality of the process that's being proposed. So let's clarify the two. And then when it comes to cost, then yeah, we would need to solicit proposals based on a very specific scope of work. Because yeah, depending on that scope of work, it could be a lower cost or a very high cost item. And it really just comes down to what that scope is. And so that's where, if we are going to consider this, that's why I believe it makes sense to have a resolution to clarify what all the scope is, where the funding comes from, so we have all those pieces on the table. That way we can make a well-informed decision.
So I think there's a few things here. We're being asked about a grant. And so if the grant comes through and it's not enough money, or we decide we're not obligated to move forward. So that's their question, is about the grant. One of the things that was said for last week was we actually had a number of actual planners that said consultants were beneficial for reviewing a comp plan. It's not the same to say you're building it from the ground up versus we've done the work. I think the key from what I read from the chair is that there's some desire to let the process completely finish and then evaluate reasonably. Another set of eyes is not an unreasonable request. For all of us who work on projects, especially very long projects, you can be so close to the project that you not see the full future forecast of a project. And I think that's what the community is asking. I don't think they're asking or even questioning the planning department. I think planning has done a really good job of creating this plan. It's now that you're done, let's have us fact check. If you look at Ada County, it's an example of when they did their comp plan, they went through multiple revisions, and they actually, once they were done, sent it out for a legal review and a professional review when it was completed. And so that's not an unreasonable ask. In terms of the comment about special interest groups, I think it's not a negative thing to have people that are involved in a topic. We hire third parties for tons of things all the time. We hire third-party engineers to give us comments on our growth. When it's in there, we send it to them because it's their specialty, and there's a professionalism and ethics that goes along with their job. So I don't think 7B being the requester of us doing it is a negative thing. It shows a community that's involved, and they're not wanting to run it. They're just asking us to participate with a grant, so we are not really wholly responsible for it. When I read through Commissioner Domke's statement, which thank you for sending over, he's providing the guardrails essentially for the process, so such that it remains in the care and custody of Bonner County elected officials to manage that if we were to move in that direction. But there isn't a guarantee that we have to move in that direction. When I originally heard this topic, I thought there was a deadline for the grant. Was there a deadline? And I'm looking at.
So I can tell you I was informed that there was, and I believe folks have already moved forward with applying with that, so we're not involved.
Okay.
So whether or not we want to pursue and actually accept a grant is still obviously up to the board in the future. So I've made everyone that I spoke with aware of the fact that I was bringing this to the board, that this would be a process that would take some time, and that if we move forward with a resolution, that would still have to be approved before any funds could be considered to be brought into the county for such a use. All of this would still have to go through legal and auditing. So all of the normal processes would still need to be followed. So I believe everyone who I spoke with was well aware of the process that would have to be undertaken in order to get to that point if the county was agreeable to doing that. And I will restate, as a licensed design professional myself, every industry that I've worked in, peer reviews are something we do on all of our documents just for thoroughness and for the ability to have a highest level of possible of confidence in the quality of our document. Not because we're questioning any of the other folks who have done the work. It's simply saying mistakes get made, and it's called human nature, and it's not in any way trying to be disparaging with the Planning Commission. I've stated this clearly to the chairman, and I'm happy to say it again. I appreciate the work the Planning Commission's been doing and all of the public input that they've been sifting through and taking into consideration. They've made significant changes from their first proposed map to the current proposed land use map. And so all of that is appreciated because they've been responsive. So this is not in any way to question the work product and intent of the Planning Commission. It's to say we have an obligation to the community to do the best professional job we can before we bring forward a document that has such a large impact to our community.
So at this time, I would like to open up for public comment on this particular item. Remember, we're holding to the 3-minute timer now so we can get through. Mr. Bowman?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was out of town last week and didn't hear any of that discussion, but I'd like to point out, hats off to the Planning Commission and Chairman Songstad. They have done a tremendous job. They've put in countless hours and taken in all this public comment, but unfortunately, and I've been deeply involved in the comp plan as it's been going through its process with the Planning Commission, they have had no guidance from a professional planner, none. And the process of building a comprehensive plan is the vision of the people. And sorry, the way your screen is, all I can see up there is my own name. I have no idea about the time. The sub-area plans got the vision of the people. That's good. Then that gets presented to the Planning Commission. And then in conjunction with a planning department that is going out and gathering data and doing analysis to typically to write the comp plan and then work with the Planning Commission to tweak it so that all the requirements are met, and it is written in a way that a professional planner would do it. And there has been no professional planner involved in this. So it shouldn't be an offense to anyone that the peer review, and as Commissioner Domke knows on an email that I sent yesterday, apparently peer review is not a common practice within our planning department, even on the most elementary of documents. And not taking this up is just, it's foolish. There should be a professional planner involved in this process, and it has not been up until now. And to Commissioner Corn's comment about the 50,000 versus the 10 or 15, I think we're only talking about the implementation component here, where that $50,000 component or quote would have been probably for an entire comprehensive plan. It's apples and oranges. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Lunsford?
Yes, Amy Lunsford for the record. I agree with also what Dave Bowman is saying. A lot of people have put a lot of time into this. We've had planners go out, which is amazing to get feedback from the county on how they want to see our rural areas look, our commercial areas look. And throwing out the catchphrase special interest is giving this a toxic undertone, and I don't think this should be used as a toxic undertone. We have people who truly do care about our agriculture, our forest lands, our people who live here, and nobody should be offended. Everybody's put in a lot of time, both the county and civilian. So let's do it right this time. Let's get this third party to look at our information, and let's make sure that we are catching things and doing it right the first time instead of constantly chasing our tails and wasting taxpayers' money. Thank you.
There's, I'm guessing that's Wayne, but Susan Martin. Okay, I'll call for Wayne Martin.
Sorry. Wayne Martin, for the record, Bonner County resident. I've always had a problem that it's just the planning commission doing their thing, using what they want and what they don't want. No offense to them. Everybody is an individual and you have your interests and all. Having a professional look at it, not just legal, is an intelligent use of money. It also is an intelligent way of being able to then turn around and let the county residents be aware that it wasn't just these people that were involved and making the comp plan, that they did it. Recommendations may or may not be made by a professional, may or may not be commented on by legal, and then you can basically say, we've done it, and you have to hold your peace until it's over. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Johnson.
Good morning. Thank you. I would like to say I agree with Dave, Amy, and Wayne, and also having a third party will help reduce the inconsistent language throughout that and the vagueness. That has been a lot of the public comments, is there's a lot of inconsistency and vagueness. This will help clean it up, but also to help close loopholes that are within the comp plan. And also the planning and zoning commissions are predominantly made up of developers and realtors. They don't have that planning background. So having that outside assistance, I think would be a tremendous impact for all of Bonner County residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Teresa Heisner. I can see a hand back there, I think.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Teresa Heisner, for the record, Bonner County resident. I do support moving forward with this professional planning. Simple fact here, this has been ongoing. This comp plan has been going on for 7 years. And I have sat in numerous hearings where I'm sorry, the planning department has made a mess of our zoning, and it's just been ongoing. I think it's time that we have a professional come in and get this done once and for all. As far as special interest groups, I think it's pretty hypocritical, Ron, of you to sit there and tout special interests when, let's be honest here, PAC, Politically Active Christians, is a special interest group who is operating in the background, making recommendations, and as far as I'm concerned, it's highly inappropriate. So let's not use that term again. Thank you.
Alan Songstad, who's the chair of, so we're not going to mind his 3 minutes so that he can give as long an answer as he wants.
Well, I don't think I have a long answer. Alan Songstad, Bonner County. Just like to raise a couple points. As Dave Bowman said, he referred to the review as a review of the implementation plan. Well, the implementation plan is going to be reviewed in its entirety once the land use component is off our plate, because that was based on the old comp plan, which incidentally was drafted by a consultant. And I think that anybody that's really involved in the planning for the county would probably agree that that the old comp plan was kind of a mess. So that was drafted by a consultant. Also, our position is really this. Our position is, look, we've done a lot of work. We've not only had a lot of public comment, we've had input from numerous state agencies, local agencies to draft the plan. we've spent a lot of time, 18 months on just the land use component. So we're ready to move forward. If the Board of County Commissioners wants to have a review after we've made our recommendation, that's up to them. That's up to you guys. We're not suggesting that you guys are bound to only look at our recommendation if you feel that's not sufficient for your purposes. But insofar as the Planning Commission is concerned, it's difficult for us to see how a consultant for $10,000 or $15,000 can come in with no background in all the public comment we've received, no background in all the public agency comments that we've received, and somehow rewrite our plan. It doesn't make any sense to us. So that's our position. But that, again, that's just the Planning Commission decision. I'd like to also clarify something about a comment that was just made about the Planning Commission being composed of developers and realtors. We have one realtor on our 7-member commission. Nobody else is a developer or a realtor. We have a couple of engineers. We have people involved in various aspects of business in the county. So I think that comment was inappropriate. So anyway, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Alan, I do have a question for you. So when you say that that a professional planner created the prior document, was it a planner that specialized in developing comprehensive plans, or was it the engineering firm that did it? Do you know the answer? Because I didn't think that the county had hired a person who wrote comprehensive plans. I thought they consulted with the engineering firm on the plan.
Well, I don't know what JUB's classification, what their qualifications were, but apparently they must have had some planning expertise. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been hired. But
okay,
well, they have a lot of different. JUB has a lot of different divisions. So
they do. I just was wondering if you knew the answer.
And Alan, to clarify our prior conversation, after we had that meeting with 7B and Connexu Land Trust and some of the members of the planning department that Friday morning, I said then, and I want to make it clear again, that it's never been my position that we would ask a consultant to rewrite the plan to try and re-envision what the Planning Commission has done through community input. I agree that would not be appropriate or productive. It's always been about simply doing a peer review to create as much clarity, consistency, and so forth. So I want to be sure that we're on the same page with what we're discussing as what the intended scope of such services would be.
well, I think you also need to nail down what it is the consultant is going to be requested to do, because it's not at all clear from the scope of work that I've seen to what they're going to do. We heard Dave say, the implementation plan. We've also heard him say just the land use component. I'm not sure which it is, but if it's a limited implementation plan, it's premature because we have to go back now and review all the goals, objectives, and policies that are in the implementation plan to make them consistent with the already adopted 14 other components, and hopefully also the land use component. So it needs to be clarified as to what exactly they're going to review.
It does.
Two very different things.
I agree. It needs to be clarified, and that's part of the purpose of this conversation, to decide to move forward with a resolution that would provide such clarity.
So at this time, we'll go to public comments in the room. So, Mrs. Welly, sorry.
Yes, listening to all the arguments and discussion on this, I really agree with the majority of the people here. If I was seeing a back surgeon and he said, we need to do surgery on your back, and this is my comprehensive plan for what I'm going to do when I'm in there. However, it will be updated as I get in and can decide what I see there and what I need to do. And I say, I want to see a chiropractor just to double check, get a second opinion. You could call that chiropractor a special interest person because they have an invested interest in their profession. However, I have a right, and I think a duty, to get a second opinion. And I think that that correlates with what's happening here. It's just an opinion. It is just a written statement of what should be done, and I think it should be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fred Arnstow, a Bonner County resident. Having been on the recipient end of the previous comp plan, my personal feeling is that anything we can do to prevent the mistakes that we've experienced in the past is something that we should absolutely, positively do. I can tell you that if the previous consultant was JUB, we were on the recipient end out of Camp A of a JUB interpretation of the previous comp plan, and they were just flat out dead wrong. Thanks.
All right, next up, sir.
Dan Willie, Bonner County resident. I can't see any reason to hesitate from a peer review of anything that is done by this board or the county. As stated, a peer review doesn't change anything. It merely goes through it, clarifies inconsistencies, and clears up anything that's vague. Anytime that someone is resistant to peer review, kind of brings them into being suspect. Why are they resistant? What is the purpose? Why would you resist something that's just going to clarify it and make it correct? Make it the best thing you can possibly get. And if we're not getting the best for this county, we're not doing our job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Susan Drumheller. I'm from Sagal, Idaho, and I'm on the board of Project 7B. And just for everybody's background, Project 7B formed to provide education and information about land use planning and land use issues in the county. We formed back in 2016, and that was when the county changed the subdivision code to exempt lots 4 and fewer from the subdivision code and called them minor land divisions. And we had concerns about that and the way that moved forward. And so our mission is to educate and involve people in land use planning and also to promote responsible land use planning. So that is our special interest. And we did apply for that grant, and we did designate that the funds go directly to the county, so they would not come through us. And we gave a general description. If this board decides not to accept the grant, that's fine. They'll just keep the money. And so, and also about the cost, in order to find a reasonable amount, like to know whether we could come up with funds to do this, we went out to a couple large planning firms that work in Idaho and Eastern Washington, and professional planning consultants. And we discussed a limited scope of work, which is generally in line with the general description that you have in your memo. And that's where they came up with, one came up with a $10,000 estimate and the other came up with a $15,000 estimate. And between Kinnicksu Land Trust and Project 7B, we thought we could raise most of that money. And so that's my update for you. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up. Hi.
Hi, Linda Whitwer, Bonner County resident. I'm relatively new, and I do greatly appreciate all the efforts of the volunteers, the commissioners here. I really appreciate Ron's concern about special interest groups and also all the work the Bonner County residents have done. However, I would like to point out that as far as optics go, one, I do think having an outside consultant review it, as long as it's unbiased, which it appears that those boundaries are being looked at to put into place, would bring better optics to the situation, given everything that I've seen transpire at the meetings over the last couple of years. I don't know, and I mean this, I don't mean any disrespect in this statement, but is the situation with the MLDs that Bonner County is now experiencing a result of previous work? Even if a prior planner was involved with overlooking that or writing that comprehensive plan, maybe that was the wrong planner, but all parties were involved at that time. So I think from an optics standpoint, it's more beneficial to have an outside source come in unbiased, especially given how kind of delicate the situation is right now. And then as far as special interest groups money, I greatly appreciate that because I've seen that happen over and over again. But money comes in all over the place, whether it's donations for your campaign or elections. So that really comes down to the integrity of how that is managed. And I feel confident in the people that are here. And I do think if I was doing something, I would want other eyes on it to dot the I's and cross the T's so we could go forward. So I'm in support of having an outside source. And thank you.
Thank you. All right, no more public comment on this, so we'll come back to the board. Given that, so one clarification, 7B is just a group that is asking the county to do this. I don't believe and from what Commissioner Domke is putting forth, it's not that they're taking over the decision-making on it, and it's not something that's being done before the comprehensive plan is completed. It is something to be done after the comprehensive plan is completed to push it through a second set of eyes to take a look at. For me, the question really is, 7B identified an available grant for a consultant that would reduce the cost to the county. And the question is, does the county want to accept a grant? Well, we don't even have to make that decision now because they already applied for the grant. So reasonably, 7B can come back and say, you've been approved for this grant. This is the county match. Do you guys want to move forward? And I believe what Commissioner Domke is asking is to do the legwork so that if that grant were accepted, that it comes before the board to say, now do you want to accept it with this? So we're just saying, do you want to do work because no one wants to work if the answer is no? And in part, the grant application moving forward at this stage is a little bit, it doesn't get to check the box to say you have the support of the county, which is what you guys were attempting to do the first pass of it, was to get that box checked. And so to me, this is just if Bonner County were awarded $30,000 to hire a grant consultant or whatever, what's the dollar amount for this grant?
It's only $5,000.
$5,000 for
but we're
the total grant is only $5,000?
The particular grant we just applied for was $5,000, but we're looking at other funding sources as well.
Okay. So if $5,000 is given to the county, would you hire a consultant for this? And to be honest, with only $5,000, you might say, well, where does the extra money come from? But that's an option once you know the decision. To me, if I were the commissioner wanting to mess with this, I would want to know the scope and what the potential cost to the county is, since the dollar amount is so low. You might say, if you're talking about, does the county have an extra $20,000 to hire a consultant? The answer might be, well, no, we didn't budget for a consultant. That's why it was done through the planning department. So, but I'm not opposed to you wanting to do the work to see if we got a grant, would we move forward? I think Mr. Songstad's comments are heard and well received, and the concerns are addressed in the presentation that you're talking about, because it's meeting the expectation of, for him, we're going to do everything that his letter asked, essentially. They're going to complete it, we're going to have workshops, we're going to show it to the public, we're going to have discussion. All of that is still going to occur and is actually a tool that then could be used if we did move forward with a consultant. And so there's nothing about, when I read through Mr. Songstad's letter, we're going to meet all of his expectations. And essentially the decision to move forward with a consultant will likely happen after all of this. And so he may be, so nothing is a crossover or duplication to me.
Yeah, and I presented it the way I did initially because the Planning Commission had not yet met and had not yet discussed that proposal. And so I wanted to leave it open for both paths. If the Planning Commission decided they wanted to work with the consultant through a review process, then I wanted to leave that open to them. Since they aren't interested in that, and they're just saying that obviously that would be just something for the board to consider as a part of our process, then we now know what their response is, and that helps inform a path for a resolution to be considered by the board. So yes, at the end of the day, I think ultimately this is all going to come down to a board decision and ultimately board action as our part of finalizing the comprehensive plan. Whether we choose to use a third-party consultant or not, I think it's just going to come down to a board decision. So I think it's prudent to bring forward a resolution to indicate all of the details so that the board can make an informed decision about whether or not they want to make an investment in, whether it's through dollars and or time, the use of a third-party consultant to perform a peer review. So I think it would be irresponsible of the board not to have some type of peer review be conducted for such a critical document to our county.
So I believe the item on the agenda for today is to consider match for grant secured by Project 7B for consultation review the comprehensive plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the general
I think
title
we
that was
probably should
used.
limit our discussion to that instead of talking about things that aren't on the agenda, such as where we set on actually hiring or even discussing about a professional planner. This is, what I see on the agenda is strictly just for the match grant. Is that correct?
Which involves,
It has a second item. He's just
Yeah.
looking at the regarding, if you look to the next sentence, it says response to planning consultant proposal. So I think that's what Commissioner Domke is discussing right now, is the proposal. And this isn't a decision, this is just a discussion about that proposal. I think the information on the grant he's just asking, should I do the legwork, which needs to include the information on the grant.
correct, and at
I
this
close
time, I
public
think
comment.
for the purpose of being expedient at this point in the discussion, I believe it's prudent to move forward with bringing forward a formal resolution for the board to consider. I'm hearing at least one other commissioner saying that, I believe Commissioner Williams, you're saying you believe it's prudent. I'm not sure, Commissioner Korn, but it sounds like at least a majority of the board thinks it's prudent. So at this point, I will plan to move forward with preparing a resolution so that the full board can consider it and make a decision.
Thank you. And can you include the information on the grant? Because if I recall the first conversation, there was an up to $5,000 commitment request by the county, but that doesn't sound right if the grant itself is only $5,000. The county match seems pretty high. So if we could bring the actual grant information back in, and then also the timeline of when the grant decision is going to be made, that way that would have to be included because we might be in the next fiscal year before we move forward with something, which would allow us to take a look at whether or not we wanted to from a financial aspect of it. I think the legwork of, if there's a potential grant award, would we accept it? There's nothing that bars us from considering it. I think my takeaway is to make sure that we're addressing what Mr. Songstad said as the concerns of when it's done, to make sure we get through our internal process of that comp plan, and then taking a look at what makes sense for the board.
I agree. There are a lot of moving parts to this, and that's why I was trying to get a feel for what the board's overall perspective was, instead of just running forward with it completely on my own. So I wanted to hear and understand the rest of the board's thoughts. So at this point, I know you can't discuss it in much more detail without having all the details in front of you to be able to.
We don't have many details.
Right, and that's why I
data.
just made it a discussion.
We don't
item.
even have anything in front of us as far as an estimate what it would cost us.
Correct.
What I have anyways is hearsay that somebody talked to a couple of planners in Washington, don't know what the scope of work was that was discussed to get that estimate, and one person said 10,000, one person said 15.
Sure.
I
understand it. I've seen those, but because the board hasn't had a scope of work brought before them to consider with potential costs. To me, it wasn't relevant to put information on the table that's not what is being proposed to the board. So I don't want to waste the board's time with information that's not going to be brought forward as an actual proposal. So at this point, I will work on that proposal as a resolution for the board to consider, so we have all of those details. That would be my intent. Does that make sense to have all of those details in front of you, Commissioner?
Okay, any further discussion on this agenda item?
None from me.
All right, seeing none, we'll move on to District 1 Commissioner update.
All right, well, majority of citizen communications for the past week have been centered around discussions on the MLD moratorium, road issues, as well as zoning violations that are occurring throughout the county and how those are being addressed. So I've been in communication and following up with folks on those issues and really trying to make sure that we have a better understanding of what our processes are and what we can communicate with citizens when those concerns and issues come up. So I've been in communication with primarily the Planning Department in Road and Bridge to answer citizen questions when they have concerns about safety of intersections, locations of crosswalks, and when we have zoning violations that happen in the county. When it comes to high priority tasks, it's been at this point primarily following up on our decisions and actions last week. And I also want to take a moment to recognize, and the timing here is pretty opportune because we've talked so much about the work of the Planning Commission, that in addition to numerous emails that I've received, I don't remember the exact number, but I know it's been probably around a dozen. I also received a handwritten note thanking the Planning Commission specifically for their reconsideration of the resort recreation zoning at Priest Lake and their responsiveness to that issue. So Chairman Songstad, this letter was sent to me, but it was actually written essentially to you and the Planning Commission. So I wanted to state that publicly, that you have the thanks of members of the public, especially those residing around Priest Lake, who appreciate the responsiveness that the Planning Commission provided to the concerns raised on that issue of the proposed map. So thank you for that. And then I can answer any questions anyone has about my update.
No questions? Michelle, do you have, your hand's been up for a little bit. Do you have a question for Commissioner Domke on what his update obtained? Okay, she just put her hand down. All right, with that, we'll move on to District 2 Commissioner report. So there have been no settlements made by Bonner County. We continue to work on protecting your tax dollars. We have a workshop tomorrow on Title 12 review. I have received a request from members of the public to do a commissioner chat with Panhandle Health addressing some of the decisions that have been made at the state level and how they think that will trickle down to Panhandle Health. I do have the Spirit Valley Town Hall on the 19th of April. Sorry, I handed you my flyer. It has all of the LD2 reps present to ask questions of what's going on down in Boise. The legislature will likely be open for a full week again, so the end is coming near. We have our Priest River Airport hangar lease for Shelter 2 is available. You'd have to do your application through that board. The lease rate is $250 a month for 1 year lease. And then the next airport board meeting is April 28th at 2 o'clock. There's a lot of people asking about that when we're doing the airport discussion. In terms of open boards, there is an open fair board position. And I do know that the advisory board site isn't up to date with the names and the terms, and so that was requested that our staff update that as well. And so we should be getting an announcement out on looking for another fair board member here shortly. I've received a lot of comments on the MLD release as well. I'm giving kind of a canned response. I've been given multiple people have asked about the leaked information, and the answer that I did speak with legal on how to respond to this question. So the way in which I respond to this question is from legal. I can say the matter has been referred to the appropriate authorities and is under review with respect to the leak. That's the answer I'm able to give. So at this time, any questions on what I reported on? And well, one more thing. Yesterday I wasn't here. I was with the Idaho Forest Group. Got a lot of update on where our forest industry is. They did a really good job. We need to sell a whole bunch of lumber. Probably the biggest concern right now from the forest industries are what are the tariffs impact to that particular industry, because there is going to be some level of impact there. They're doing much better than they did last fiscal year, so they had good margins to report. But they definitely appreciate people being informed on what's going on in the timber industry, because that is the bread and butter of our particular area, and understanding how tariffs might impact that industry is something we'll see as we move forward. The other impact is the workforce. People willing to work in timber. It's a hard job. They do a lot of people that do seasonal work on work visas, but they're expecting that might also have a negative impact on that particular industry. So that's my update from the Idaho Forest Group conference that I attended yesterday. So any questions for me now? All right, with that, we'll go over to Commissioner Korn.
So last week, we had a workshop regarding Title 11 with planning. I thought it was a very well addressed meeting. I think we got a lot done on that, and I think that's going to be finalized here shortly. Friday was March's Bonner County Civil Defense and Resilience Team's monthly meeting. We had a Navy veteran come in and present the history of our Constitution, which went over very well. I learned a few things. I love taking those kind of classes. April's meeting will be on the fourth Friday of this month, and we're looking at probably having a fire mitigation presentation so that the citizens can be more resilient when it comes to fire. That's my presentation.
All right, we'll go on to public comment. At this time, we'll go back. So I did online first, last thing, so I'm gonna do in-room first this time. So anybody in the room want to give a public comment? Was that you raising for her, or you're both giving a comment, Dan? Okay. He said ladies first, ma'am.
Well, evidently your hands are tied with respect to legal. But I am very concerned about the MLD leak and the legal ramifications that should occur as a result of the leak. I worry that one special interest, I used your word, one developer was able to get the information, locking out all the rest, and what kind of lawsuits are going to come up from those people. And I'm sure the legal department is pulling their hair out with respect to that. I guess I'm sure the answers that I'm going to get, but I want to ask. So I want to ask each commissioner, did they have any part in leaking that information? Mr. Domke, did you or any family member or any friend of yours have special knowledge that allowed them to, or you, to release that information?
Absolutely not.
Asia?
No.
Ron?
So I shared it, and I want to be very clear that the term leak should not be used. It was not leaked. If this would have been properly noticed in the 48 hours as it should have been, then maybe some of the people that were in the process and mostly finished with their process could have finished it. What I did was I shared it, trying to get information so that we could have people coming to this meeting and speaking out against the way it was done. It was done improperly.
So you gave a developer
Nope,
special knowledge?
I did not talk to any
Or
developer.
someone.
And I'm not going to
special
say any more about this.
You can't.
I
but
answered
that-
your question.
That answers my question thoroughly. This is I have 10 copies of the legal ramifications of said leak. And I think that it's important for the public to be able to see those and anyone wants a copy, they will.
I would like to reiterate, it would only be a leak if it was a confidential memo. So
So my only comment is the board had, I'm not going to comment on the content of what took place, only on the comment that the rest of the board members did not follow open meeting law appropriately. We received advice from legal. We addressed the issue the way that legal advised us to. I'm not going to comment on what took place because, as stated, because I anticipated, I've seen all the comments online, I anticipated it was going to come up, and legal's response to me was specifically on how to answer that it was being referred on. It's easy to want to defend yourselves when you hear comments, but I'm going to let the process play out, but I'm going to respectfully state that we followed the advice of legal when we received an email from planning and on Friday before that meeting. And so we followed the process for our open meeting. And we got the justification that was explained to the public in that particular meeting. I understand some people don't like the process, but we followed legal's advice. Mr. Welly?
Dan Welly, Bonner County resident. When you step into the public life as a commissioner, as an assessor, as any one of the offices that have been represented here today, even as a deputy sheriff or a police officer in the city, you put yourself above the normal citizenry. You're in the limelight. Your actions are there to assist the citizens. The purpose of government is to facilitate the rules that are established by government, to correct the rules that are bad, to punish offenders through passing laws that are correct and proper. Another thing is to keep the public informed of what you're doing. We have members of this board who do that. We have members of this board who kind of skimp on it. Ron, yeah, I'm sorry. Your weekly summarizations of what you're doing are kind of short. Like, you're the man to speak to for EMS. We have heard nothing about EMS for weeks, and people want to know about how that progress is going. We're hoping for something positive because things have been going so negative. And I'm hoping that down the road we can get to the point where that EMS system that we've got in this county is functioning at a proper speed and doing everything we expect it to do. Lastly, regarding peer review, and you might have learned this recently, even the United States Constitution was subject to peer review. Are you aware of that? Guy's name was Thomas Jefferson. The peer review was the Bill of Rights. So even a founding document was found to be inadequate when it was written, and things were added to it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Susan Drumheller, Sagal, Idaho, and I want to thank the board for passing the moratorium. I think it's, past time to take a hard look at the minor land division law and code section and the piecemeal repairs that have happened over the past few years. I don't think they've captured all the problems with it, so I'm really glad that you did it. And I don't object to the way you did it, because back in 1998, when the county lifted, so they had amnesty for people who had illegal lots, and they decided to get rid of the amnesty law. And a bunch of illegal lots, they gave legal notice and all that, and all these people rushed in at the last minute and created over 270 illegal lots because this had been publicly noticed. And so all of a sudden we had almost 300 new illegal lots in the county. And had they done it the way you did, the MLD change, I think that it would not have they would not have had another, almost 300 illegal lots in the county. So I think there is reason to, keep some of these things under wraps if you know that people are going to take advantage of it. So appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room want to give a comment before we go online?
Cheryl Messer, Bonner County resident. I would like to see a peer review of whether when they come up with the comprehensive plan, whether it aligns with what the people put in the sub-area comprehensive plans. Because to me, that's the most important. Ron, you want to know what do the people want? This is the people's vision. And no matter who you are on planning, you come with a bias. I come with a bias. You all have biases. And so I think it's very good to have an outside look at this. And we've experienced writing in our current comprehensive plan that has been inconsistent and has not been distinguishing two types of land uses. And it's caused a lot of conflict and lawsuits and time and lack of peace for people. So I would really ask for a good review. And we all have different skill sets, so an outside look brings a different skill set. And in legal stuff, words are very important. Thank you.
I want to make sure I compliment the planners because I attended one of the workshops for my area, and they made a point of knowing how much of the sub-area plan was included, and they gave a percentage of, in my particular area, they used, I want to say ours was 95% of the sub-area plan was included in the comp plan revision, but one of the things that they took the time to do was actually to identify what was not included, because just because we want it doesn't mean it should have belonged in there. And it made it something that the people could digest. So they did do that at the public hearings. So we'll go online. Kristen Dodd.
I just want to remind the chair that it is their responsibility to keep decorum in these meetings, which includes maintaining civility and shutting down personal attacks. Commissioner Corn has been very transparent, and what was not transparent was sneaking an item onto the agenda after the meeting started last week and claiming that it was an emergency. This is an issue that's been going on for some time. It's not something that just popped up and was all of a sudden an emergency and severe, injury was going to take place if we didn't act. That was, in my opinion, was a cop-out.
Thank you. And so if a member of the public addresses the board with criticism, that is what free speech is. There isn't, from what I can see, a lack of decorum within our meeting, but I definitely do pay attention to that and encourage people to address the board members when they have issues.
When somebody is naming a specific member of the board and being disrespectful and actually doing personal attacks, that is the opposite of decorum.
Okay, thank you. Teresa Heisner, I believe your hand is up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Heisner, Bonner County resident. First of all, speaking of decorum and speaking to a county commissioner who was elected by the people to serve the people, I'm sorry, I didn't hear any personal attacks. It's just, as you would say, being transparent. I'm disappointed, Ron, that you took an oath to the citizens of Bonner County to protect the citizens of Bonner County, and sharing that information, in my opinion, is harmful to the people of Bonner County. Speaking solely for myself, who spent 3 years of my life on the sub-area committee, which again is now drug out for 7 years, I have 100% been against the MLD process. So to leak, I'm not going to use the word leak, I'll redact that, to share that information has literally caused harm to the process. So I really think that you should be mindful next time you consider doing that. And I'm going to circle back. I'm going to pull a Jen Psaki and circle back to PAC, who the majority of the Bonner County Republican Central Committee, Ron, which you sit on, is heavily influenced by the politically active Christians who have their own agenda. And I know this because I was on PAC. And I think that should be separated from any of your decision making, that you should speak and think independently. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amy Lunsford.
Yes, Amy Lunsford for the record. I'm going to start out by saying I do owe Ron an apology. Last week, I misspoke about the 24 hours for accidents. I thought I was watching on Zoom. I thought he had stated that somebody had waited over 24 hours to report the accident, but really he said somebody has 24 hours. I am not a hypocrite, nor am I a liar, and I'm all right stepping back and saying I made a mistake. My next question is, in last week's meeting, there was discussion about family splits. I had left that meeting feeling like Bonner County families were protected from the MLD decision, and somebody had stated to me that the family splits that were discussed at last week's meetings were not giving families legal parcels to their children. And I was just wondering if somebody could give me clarification on that, because that's the most important part of us giving a family member a piece of our property, is for it to be a legal deeded parcel so they can get a mortgage to be able to build a home for themselves. So could I get clarification on that? Thank you.
You want to answer?
I'd like to say something about that, Amy. First of all, thank you for the apology. And if you noticed, I moved the microphone closer to me so that you'll be able to hear me better on Zoom. I just talked to our planning director yesterday, and I am a strong supporter of the family exemption. Evidently, I'm not aware of what goes on, that pretty much half of all the people that apply for family exemptions are people that are using it as a loophole, that it is not for a family member, but it's an easier way for people to split off their property, make a couple of parcels, and then sell it. And there's a lot of other loopholes. There's nothing preventing me from splitting off a piece of property for my son, and then my son can quit claim it back to me and I can sell it. There's a lot of ways that it can be abused. And I had quite a lengthy discussion with our director yesterday, because like I said, I am a strong supporter of the family exemption. I do believe that a family should be able to do that down to a certain size. I'm not talking about half-acre lots or whatever in a rural area. But how do we keep people from abusing the system? And that's just an ongoing question with government and laws. We can get into gun laws and everything else. A couple of bad apples do something wrong, and the rest of all the law-abiding citizens pay for it. So if you have any recommendations, I'd love to hear how we can keep that from happening but still have a family exemption.
And I will absolutely concur that that's part of why it was brought forward to us by the planning department last week as a concern and an issue. And so because of that history, they brought that forward, and because there's been an inability to work with the current code language that had been in place in order to prevent those loopholes from occurring. The other piece I just want to make sure everyone understands is that the reason for the moratorium is to allow proper time to review and amend the code. It's not to say that there isn't a need to figure out how to support our families and our community, but it's saying we need to do it in a better and more thoughtful way. So the process over the next number of months will be to have workshops and to work out, to hammer out the details of how we're going to amend the code to make it better, to address these needs, to be thoughtful and responsible about how these land divisions occur. So we encourage active involvement of the citizens throughout this process.
I think the other thing to remind people is the family that wants to split their land still has the option. It's a short plat. There wasn't a move away from being able to do the divide. It was the health and safety aspect that wasn't attached to one way of dividing versus another way of dividing. So I don't want people to get kind of stuck on the appeal to emotion of my family because it's called family and we think of it that way, but the division still can occur. You can give your family member a piece through the short plat. It's just not called a family exemption, and it's not an MLD. The MLD had no strings attached to the development, and as stated in that discussion, we were dealing with people that took a large piece of property and built split using an MLD, and then you end up with a subdivision. And you're getting feedback from emergency services regarding we put in a subdivision without the rules regarding a subdivision. I will say there was a commissioner from a different county who saw our meeting and asked, why do you guys have MLDs without restrictions? Because they have something called a mini subdivision in their area to address it. So we're addressing our obligation through LUPA in that way. But if you are a person who wants to divide and give a piece to your family, you can use the short plat. And we addressed, if you watch that meeting, we increased short plat from 5 to 10. And so there was consideration for that. Michelle Johnson.
Michelle Johnson, Bonner County resident. I just want to say that I also agree and support Susan Drumheller's comments.
Thank you. All right. Dave Bowman.
Dave Bowman, Bonner County. Wow, there's a lot to go on here. Commissioner Williams, thank you for saying what you just did about the family exemption and the availability of short plat. My understanding is the family exemption is pretty unique to Bonner County, and there's really no way. Commissioner Korn even pointed out a couple of ways that turn it into a loophole. There's really no way to enforce the family thing, and I think in our code, family isn't even designed. Is that your third cousin's brother-in-law? You know, the whole thing is just rife with it's set up for abuse. With respect to whether Commissioner Korn leaked or shared what was going to happen in the last week's meeting, and I was on the road. I only caught a little bit of it. That's a leak. Just call it what it is. I'm not privy to what was shared between legal and the commissioners, but it's a leak, and it got out, and somebody took advantage of it, and that brought harm to the county. And I caught only a little bit of last week's meeting where Commissioner Korn, you pointed out that it was utterly ridiculous that we should be using health, safety, and welfare to call an emergency. Well, your first priority as commissioners and every elected official and the department head is the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Bonner County. Moving on, I want to remind people, if they don't already know, Planning Commission 4:30 tonight will be taking up the implementation component, as well as, I just spotted this today, the RV park, what we're asking for to have the RV parks disallowed in rural zones, and they will also be taking up this MLD moratorium. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, just to remind people, is a workshop on the modifications or revisions that Planning Department is asking for in Title 12. And then on Thursday, we have the RV park, the CUP 0030-21 RV park in the Blanchard area is coming back for the third time after being sent back by the court twice. Unfortunately, our planning department put out the agenda saying a 1:30 start time when it's actually 5:30. They have corrected it. I asked Director Gabel to please announce that at today's meeting in case people looked at the agenda. Apparently, he didn't see fit to do that, but it is 5:30. And let's pack that room, folks, and make sure you read the staff report. I'll be putting it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lady.
Good morning, Jim Lady, Spokane. I just was kind of curious. So it looks like there's an investigation about some information that was divulged that we now know was divulged by Commissioner Korn. And we know that because the Wellies have brought this to the attention, and their direct questioning of the commissioners was kind of interesting, that they kind of knew that that answer was going to be there. I'm wondering if there might be an investigation on who possibly leaked the information, that it was Ron Korn that divulged the information. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, did I already call on you, Wayne? Is it still up, or? Because you were Susan a minute ago.
Right, I got my phone up. No, you have not called on me.
There's a little bit of an echo, so you might be near your other laptop or something.
That should take care of it.
Thank you.
So first off, I'd like to commend the commissioners for how they are conducting their business compared to what has happened in the past. I am disappointed to hear that somebody decided to allow another person or persons to have information that, from what I understood last week, was going to be kept quiet. And there was a reason for it, so that what had happened last Monday was not to occur. I cannot always make it to all the meetings that are going on, groups that I'm committed to. I do appreciate that you guys have kept Zoom up and operating. And it's nice to be able to converse and express opinions as to what is going on, and when you folks feel that it's okay that you are giving comments back. Hopefully next week I will have a list of all the questions that I have asked in the past, and again asked to have those answered. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that is our last. If there's not another name up there. Are you standing up again? I guess we do round twos, so round two, no one else.
Just to address Jim Leedy's accusations, I have not spoken to the commissioners about that incident. I had no clue what Brian, Asia, or Ron were going to say. Not a clue. I had no idea where it came from. You can doubt that all you want, but I didn't.
Thank you. Dave Bowman, round two.
I'll be quick. Something I forgot before, but I would like to respond to Kristen Dodd's ridiculous comment about decorum.
Straight to the board, though. Okay.
Well, speaking to the board is for your agendized comment on agendized items. If you look at your rules, public comment is just simply public comment. And the fact of the matter is, and I probably know this better than just about anybody, given what I've been through with the board and the courts, that lack of decorum means you're speaking out of turn and you're disrupting the room. Once you are recognized to speak by the chair, there is this thing called the First Amendment, and it's also, it's in the Idaho Constitution, granted by God and protected by both constitutions, that you can say anything you want, which means even if you want to say vulgar stuff, you're allowed to do that. Of course, it's in bad taste, but lack of decorum, saying the truth or bringing out what a commissioner has done that you're unhappy with is not a lack of decorum. And it's just bizarre to me that someone who claims to be all about people's rights would say that. It's insane. That's all I got. Thanks.
All right. Yes.
John Dupree, Bonner County resident. I've been coming to these meetings for a few years, and I have to say that I am very proud of this board, the entire board. The very fact that you can disagree and share is commendable. I observed the last board, and it was shameful the way that certain people treated certain parts of the board, and it was a disrespectful board to the citizens. Well, you know, we're human. We make mistakes sometimes, and we are trying to do our best. And I have to say that I honor the public servants I've observed in this room for the last few years. I honor this board, because you are doing what we, the people, hope government would do. Now, I hope that this issue of sharing, leaking, does not blow out of proportion. Because I know from observation that our intent is right. And you're trying to do the right thing for we, the people. I read something on an internet thing the other day that was very disrespectful for a board member, and from somebody who claims to have, I'm ashamed of that individual for saying what that individual said about this board member. But you know something? These are public servants. They serve us. They are listening to us, and they have as a human being, sometimes makes a mistake. We need to forgive one another, and to have fellow Christians throw stones. I mean, what did Jesus do for you who have not sinned? Go ahead, pick up that stone and throw it. Well, I think that the people that say derogatory things about this board and about public servants need to look in a mirror before they start throwing their stones. Jesus said, the world will know you are mine by the way you love one another. And it's time that we do love one another. And excuse me for, well, love you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Dupree.
Hi, Kathy Payton, for the record, Bonner County resident. I agree with everything John just said, so thank you. Also, I think we need to be really careful about people, maybe unintentionally, but trying to divide us, because that's how they really work and get to us. That's exactly what happened with the last board, was the division and the attacks, and that should have never happened. It was a disservice to the people and to the board member that was being attacked. So we don't need to attack. We do need to say, allow people, all of you, to make a mistake if you make a mistake, or to misunderstand something. But I didn't even want to talk about that. I want to talk about the land division thing. I don't know that much about it. But I do know that about 2 years ago, my husband and I wanted to, our house is on 7 acres, and we also bought the 5-acre parcel attached to it. We wanted, because that 5-acre boundary line went right through our pond and took most of the field that I wanted to have for my garden and my chickens, I was not able, well, we wanted to give that 5 acres to our son, and we wanted to split it at the creek that runs through the property and give him 2.5 acres and keep the other 2.5 acres and attach that to our county property. But when we went to the county to talk to them about that, not to your board, but whoever we had to go to, I've even forgotten who it was, they said they'll never approve it because we can't split 5 acres. And I said, well, as for our son, you can't, that field that line is in, both lines would be in, is pretty swampy, and you can't build down there anyway. It's not like we could have another house down there and split ours up. We just wanted to let him have part of it and let us have the other part. And to look at it in person, it was perfectly logical to split it at the creek. But they said, don't even bother to try. You can if you want, but it's just, we would have had to pay $10,000 to have a survey done and take the chance that then we would be turned down. So I absolutely think if you have to make specific rules on splitting lands for family members and say it only can be for sons or sons and daughters or however you want to do it, but I think it's definitely worth looking at, because we wound up just selling them the entire 5 acres. And now the dividing line goes right through my chicken coop. It goes right through the pond and everything. We put an easement on that, an easement of gross, to be able to maintain the use of that if they ever sold their property, but it's really difficult. So please consider allowing families to split 5 acres in two. There will never be another house there anyway. It's not like it caused a subdivision, okay?
I think maybe just because for reference that you're talking about two different things. It wasn't,
Okay.
because yours isn't about the family divide. Yours is actually about this minimum lot size, I think is what you ran into.
Yes.
That's independent of the family divide issue. So you weren't being allowed, from what you just said, to go below the minimum lot size by the
Right.
division. And that is not related at all to your desire to give it to your son. It was only minimum lot size.
So you aren't considering
It's not-
changing the minimum lot size at all?
Well, no, I'm just addressing what he just happened to be your son in this
Right.
case. The minimum lot size is what it sounds like planning said you can't do that because you'd fall
Right.
below the minimum lot size.
Exactly.
So it wasn't related to family. It was where you are and what your minimum lot size is going from 5s.
And if I can offer additional, the minimum lot size question you just asked would be associated with the current effort to update the comprehensive plan. Because once the comprehensive plan amendments are done, then they'll update the county code. And the county code will ultimately get into the details of how we deal with defining lot sizes through the zoning and what's allowed within those uses and what exceptions are allowed. So if you want to have input in that process, then as you see the workshops coming out associated with the comprehensive plan and the workshops that'll happen after that associated with the county land use zoning, so Title 12 of our code, county code, those would be times for you to ask those questions and be a part of the process and offer input.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, it is 10:58 and this meeting is adjourned. We will